Okay, as you all gather, I'm going to just stop and say, my name is Jacqui Lewis. Some of you know me and some of you don't, but I'm the senior minister and public theologian at Middle Collegiate Church, where I've been for almost 20 years. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and we're having a series of conversations now about Freedom Rising on the way to our big in-person convening in New York called Freedom Rising, Dismantling Fascism with Fierce Love. We hope you'll come be with us in person if you can. Sometime later in the year, we're going to put this conference up in the digital spaces and give you an opportunity to do that. But there's something really powerful about being in person. And I am thrilled to hold some space tonight with my friend, my colleague, my classmate, the Reverend Dr. Obery Hendricks. We did time at Princeton Theological Seminary together, and Obery is a professor, a public theologian, the author of so many books, but I really love the politics of Jesus. So I want to just shout that out. And we're going to have a conversation tonight about what's going on? What's going on? Obery, welcome.
Thank you, Jacqui. So good to be with you as always.
I'm glad you're here. Obery, do you want to say anything more about yourself to introduce yourself?
No, I teach religion and African American studies at Columbia University. My latest book is one you all should read, not because I've written it, Christians Against Christianity, but because it deals with right-wing evangelicals and Christian nationalists in a way that no one else does. I'm a biblical scholar, not a theologian, so I get to the meat of it. And I'm also a freedom fighter, and work on the intersection of politics and political economy and religion. That's who I am, sort of in a nutshell.
Obery, I think that, hold your book up one more time so people can see that. Christians Against Christianity. Y'all, Obery wrote that book. But if I could give a tweet about what's happening today, right in this moment, as Mr. Trump makes his way into New York to be arrested because of crimes he's at least believed to have committed. And folks are trying to compare him to Jesus. Makes me bite my hair. That book, Obery, and your thoughts on that are a great place to start. What in the living hell is going on with how the church and the churchy folks are trying to act like Trump is a second Messiah? Help me, Obery.
Oh, we're talking about a specific group of folks, right-wing evangelicals. And of course, it's not all evangelicals. But, it's very appropriate because, during this week, Jesus cleansed the temple and, and then he was crucified on Friday, and Trump is in trouble during this whole week. I'm kidding. It's because that's all bull. It's crazy. Some of these right-wing folks literally have called Donald Trump a messiah. And the wife of Sheldon Adelson, who was a casino mogul in Las Vegas and a benefactor of Donald Trump, his wife said that there should be a book of Trump in the Bible. But let me tell you who this Trump is. They asked him about to describe what Easter means to him, and he said, well, it really means something very special. I'm going to church in an hour from now, and it's a beautiful church. I'm in Florida, and it's just a very special time for me. And it really represents family and get together and something, if you're a Christian, it's just a very important day. Ridiculous. He didn't even know what Christian means. Doesn't mention God, crucifixion, resurrection, even Jesus. But worse than that, they asked him, and I'm quoting from my book now, they asked him, who was Jesus to him? He said, Jesus to me is somebody I think about for security and confidence, somebody I can revere in terms of bravery and in terms of courage. And because I consider the Christian religion so important, somebody I can totally rely on in my own mind. He doesn't, I mean, it's ridiculous. It doesn't mention salvation, atoning death, doesn't even talk about Jesus as the Lord and Savior, but they call him a Christian. This man is the antithesis of Christianity. It's like if I believed in a metaphysical antichrist, that would be him, because he's opened this Pandora's box of evil, which really represents the antithesis of everything that the gospel stands for.
Obery, let's just stick right there for just a second. We are people who have theological training, theological degrees, advanced degrees about theology and our faith and the history of it. But the word Antichrist often gets kicked around and we don't know exactly what it means. Right. Could you say what it means? What does it mean, Antichrist?
Well, first, what it doesn't mean is, first, it's important to say that Antichrist is never mentioned in the book of Revelation. So the beast, book of Revelation, is not the Antichrist. And, what Tim LaHaye tries to portray as an Antichrist and Left Behind series, that's not it. Or like in The Omen and all that crazy stuff about this singular metaphysical figure. No, the Antichrist is mentioned only in 1 John in the New Testament, and it speaks of an Antichrist and Antichrists, who are those who teach the opposite of what Jesus teaches, in the name of Jesus, in order to further their own goals and serve their own interests. And so the book also, it says that they are imbued with a spirit of Antichrist, which really I think we should understand as an ideology of using Christianity for their own selfish ends in a way that has nothing to do with the gospel at all. So we can call it Antichrist or anti-Christian, the antithesis, the opposite of what Jesus taught.
That is so well said, my friend. And I'm going to just take it out like another paragraph, right? Mm-hmm. Antichrist, anti-Christian, anti-Jesus' teachings. Mm-hmm. Meaning, Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Right. Love God with everything you have. Mm-hmm. Jesus said, the first will be last and the last will be first. Jesus said, it's actually more difficult for a really super billionaire type rich person to get through the eye of a needle than a camel. Mm-hmm. Jesus actually said, share your resources. Jesus actually said, forgive the unforgivable. Jesus actually sat with the outsiders, healed the lepers and the blind. So the persona, and let's say the program of Jesus, was a radical, fierce love that went all the way to the boundaries of what was untouchable and unlovable and unknowable, and said, y'all also belong to God. Mm-hmm. So in the name of the African Semitic, look at the genealogies, brown, marginalized, homeless, refugee baby who grew up to be a rabbi and a carpenter, read handyman. In the name of that guy, we do prosperity gospel. In the name of that guy, we do anti-Semitism. In the name of that guy, we do white supremacy, like somehow God likes white folks better. What Obery's saying is that whole line of philosophical, ideological junk is not in cohesion with the teachings of Jesus.
Yeah, not at all. And, I mean, there are so many differences. Their individualistic, libertarian take on things, just, about there's no responsibility to have a social safety net and all that. I mean, that militates against love your neighbor as yourself, right? Love your neighbor as yourself is really the core of the gospel in social terms, because what essentially says that we have a responsibility. We should want for our neighbors all the good things, the freedom, the liberation, all of that, the resources that we want for our own loved ones and ourselves. We should want the same for our neighbors and their loved ones. But it means even more than that, because since we are willing to struggle for the good things for ourselves and our loved ones and our in-group, that we have the responsibility to struggle for the same for our neighbors. In other words, that we have a gospel responsibility to struggle for a just society, which does not include, lying at every turn, treating immigrants like there's some lower form of life, and on and on and on. But I'd like to add one other thing. Most Christians don't have a sense of what the core of the gospel is. And I would argue that there are two parts. Love your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, the vertical, and love your neighbor as yourself, the horizontal, which is the greatest social commandment. But also Matthew 25:31-46, which essentially says that the way that we are to be judged worthy of salvation is whether we're trying to help someone else who is in need. It doesn't say anything about what folks have to believe, who they should have to love and all that. It's about our responsibility to struggle for everyone, and particularly the least of these, to have what they need. That's the core of the gospel. And that militates against everything that the right wing stands for. They stand for individualism. They stand for selfishness. They stand for looking out for your own little in group. And that's the antithesis, the opposite of the gospel message.
That's so well said, Obery. One of the things that I did in research for my book, Fierce Love, was to look at what were the world's major religions saying about love, right? Mm-hmm. And you and I know we build our Christianity on the Judaism of Jesus, right? So when Jesus is preaching, love God with all you have and love your neighbor as yourself, he's pulling from Leviticus and Deuteronomy, Hebrew scriptures. That's in our text. And it gets also codified in do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, right? Islam says, don't withhold from anyone that which you need for yourself. Mm-hmm. Judaism says 36 times, you shall love the stranger, because you want strangers in a strange land, and love your neighbor as yourself one time. The Sikh faith says, don't do anything to break anyone else's heart. So those are just some samples of world religion. Everybody's saying, like, love your neighbor as yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And I like to think, Obery, that this comes from our Africanness. Like, all the humans come from sub-Saharan Africa, where the spirit of Ubuntu happening, like, I see you, you exist. I'm human because you're human. So this kind of interdependence, I can't be who I am until you are who you are, Dr. King would say, as a kind of pre-religion, human concept. When I say that, does that resonate to you, oh scholar of biblical literature?
Yeah, the primary biblical ethic is really a communal ethic. In antiquity, there was no, in almost every society, there was no concept of individualism. Right. There's no word for individual in biblical Hebrews, only people, my people. It's always about the common good. And we see that reflected with Jesus. We see that reflected, for instance, in the second chapter is this first chapter, I think, of Luke, with Simeon in the temple. Right. All day and night, he's praying for his own personal salvation. No, he's not. He's praying for the consolation of his people, for the common good. And so that's another thing that's missed. I mean, what we as Christians are supposed to be doing, what the gospel imperative is the struggle to make this a just world for everybody, not just ourselves. And so we are in a fight against, there's an evil onslaught from extreme right-wing evangelicals who are trying to destroy, they're distorting the gospel message. They're making wrong sound right and right sound wrong. They're doing everything to keep us from fighting to make this a more just world. And I stress the word fighting, the word struggle, because most folk don't seem to realize this is a dangerous time. Yes. These folk are going crazy. The dark web has all kinds of plots in it to kill and to destroy. And that piece of trash, Donald Trump, and that's what he is, he is trying to cause another uprising. People are going to get hurt again. People died the last time this creep had people rise up. He's trying to start another one, though the judge today told him he better not do that. We'll see. I don't think he can control himself. So this is a terrible, terrible time. That's why, conferences like this are so very important to disseminate information, to inspire and to empower folk to get out and struggle. Because the watchword today from the gospel imperative is to struggle for justice in this world, on earth as in heaven.
Woo, Obery, that is so true, bud. Two things I want to pick up what you're saying. One is just to say out loud, Obery and I are not. We're theologians. We're historians. We're ethicists. We're psychologists, right? We're not the people to tell you who to vote for, but we are the people to tell you, look at the stuff you see and don't pretend like you don't see it.
Yeah.
To act as though a genital grabbing, lying, cheating, stealing, insurrection causing human is like Jesus, the only thing they have in common is they both got arrested. So bam, point one. They both got arrested. That would be them and Freddie Gray and, you know what I mean? Like a list of people, including the Central Park 5, come on. Arrest is not making you the same. But two, also, if we are people of faith and we are both people who understand that God speaks more than one language, but whatever your faith conversation is, look through that lens at what you want the world to be. What you want the world to be, what I want the world to be is heaven on earth. I pray it every day, every Sunday. Let on earth as it is in heaven, God, may your kingdom come. And you can't be, y'all, we do not have time in this hot mess moment to pretend like we don't see what we see. That I think that's what Obery said. I'm saying it again.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, pardon me. No, I know you want to go to questions, but I just like to say this, that when one reads the gospel, see that Jesus' message is essentially an ethical message. He says almost nothing about what you have to believe. He gives no doctrines, no orthodoxy or anything like that. And so when I talk about Jesus and the gospel, I'm talking about, and when I talk about love, I'm talking about action. That's how we're to be judged. That's the way Christians were essentially judged until Constantine changed it so that you were judged by what you say you believe rather than what you do. So I'm saying that to say that the ethical foundation of the gospel is the same as the ethical foundation of the other religions you're talking about. We can come together. We have to come together and struggle. And you don't have to believe in Jesus as we believe it to believe in justice, because the biggest ethic of the Bible, the one that occurs most often, more than any other, is justice in the Bible, more than any other, 400 plus times.
That's right, Edward. So y'all, we want to get to the place where we could have a couple of questions for you. And on the way to that, our wonderful colleague, Nick, is in the backdrop trying to help you get some questions on the table. One, we're going to put this piece out in the world, and you might have questions for us later. Two, Obery alluded to, and it is fact, that we are having an amazing back-in-person convening of folks like Obery and Kelly Brown Douglas and Christian Dumais and artists like Genesis B and Robbie P. Jones. Like, think about a panoply of folks across disciplines who are saying, let's make America better. Not great again, because I don't know if they've ever been great, but make America better. April 28th to 30th in New York City at Weston Collegiate Church for you, my friends. If you use the code Ubuntu, UBUNTU, I am because you are who you are, you get a big discount on this conference, and Obery and I would like you to be there talking to us, because we're building a movement, right? We're professors, we got stuff to do, but we got to stop, child. We cannot. I said we cannot sit still while this nation goes to hell.
Yeah, that's right.
So I want to invite you, if you have a question, put it in the question thing, and Nick will help us. But we also want you to we're also theologians. We went to seminary together. And my core theological construct is you, exactly where you are a child of the holy, with gifts and talents and insight and wisdom. You are anointed. Somebody say amen. You are anointed, called, commissioned to stand where you stand in the world and use all of your gifts to make heaven and earth. So not just me and Obery, not just Nick that's in the background, not just the people on the beautiful list you're going to see, but you, baby, you got to show up, and you cannot be hoodwinked or, crazy town about the bad stories in the world. We need you to open your eyes, open your heart, right, Obery, and make it better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, Obery, while we're looking for a question, is there some closing thing? Okay, here's a comment from Brandy. Hey, y'all. Hi, Terrence. Brandy says, I feel angry because our justice system favors certain people. So true. Not a question, but maybe to say something a few things about. Brandy, this nation and our system was built on white supremacy, full stop. It was not for me, it was not for Obery, and it was not for you unless you secretly are a white straight man who owns land. Facts. So let's read my book, Fierce Love, has a good analysis about that. Girl, the way we get free is we look at it straight on. This nation is not designed for immigrants, although it's built from immigrants. It's not designed for Black people, though we built it. It's not designed for Indigenous people, though we stole their land to get it. It's designed for white, straight, land-owning men with power. How we fix that? The truth will set us free, and we build coalitions to make it better. Obery, what would you want to say to Brandy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing I would add to that, and you're absolutely correct, is that we have to really critically engage the political economy, capitalism. Capitalism really militates against the gospel because it's individualistic, it's selfish, it's anti-democratic. I mean, whoever has the most capital has the most votes. Capitalism has crushed so many people, and it survives. It has to have a wretched underclass in order to survive. It's built on exploitation. It's built on racism, actually. Racial capitalism built this country. So we have to really be in dialogue with it. That's why Martin Luther King was anti-capitalist. That's why so many folk, there were many religious leaders who were anti-capitalist. They didn't come right out and say it for obvious reasons. But we have to stand up and say that there's something wrong with capitalism, just like Martin Luther King did. Because if all we do is work around the edges and change a law here and a change there, a law there, we're not changing the system. That's why when Jesus said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, it's anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to preach good news to the poor.
Right.
Well, what is good news to the poor? It's not that those who are poor will become rich and there'll still be more poor people we have behind them. It means that this speaks to systemic change, that we have to change the system. He heralded the changing the system that we're under so that it would be more just. So we have to look at not just the symptoms, but the causes of the systemic injustice.
Come on, my brother. Come on, brother. I'm thinking today is April 4th. I mean, you evoked King right there. And I remember Obery, I was, in fifth grade, had skipped a grade and so was young when Dr. King was killed for my age. And just the whole idea of both his powerful speech on Vietnam and his emerging and evolved feelings about war and militarism and his assassination. So, as we wrap tonight, y'all, do not just stick with Dr. King's I Have a Dream, right? Look up a couple more speeches and think especially about his comments on Vietnam at the Riverside Church in the city of New York, where I live, and think especially about his letter from a Birmingham jail, which I think calls out some of the things that Obery and I are talking about today, and asks, honestly, guys, a poignant question. Do we want to really be Christian in our hearts? In our hearts? I'm a universalist, so honestly, I don't care if you're not Christian. To be honest, I don't care. But since if you're going to say you're Christian, act like it.
Be a Christian, yeah. And
Be a Christian, right? Stick with it. Get with it. Get with Jesus.
Yeah, yeah.
You are a person who believes in love. Love calls us in, right, over to just take risks to make a better world.
To struggle.
To struggle.
To struggle. And that's because a lot of people talk about love, but they don't realize that love sometimes dictates you do some real tough things. I mean, you really have to think about it. You know, if folk broke into your office right now and came at you with a machete, love would mean that somebody had to stand up with a baseball bat, maybe a gun, to protect an innocent person. We have to stop thinking about the namby-pamby kind of stuff that folk give us. But I like to say, in terms of King also, King said a lot of things. King said there's a big, see, the radicality of King has been domesticated.
Yes,
King
it has.
that we have, that there's a difference between Reformation and Revolution. This is at the end of his career, Revolution. He said he's tired of working around the edges. He wants to change the whole architecture of society. And he was killed because a week before the Poor People's March was supposed to start, because the Poor People's March would have given him a platform to really talk about his democratic socialist commitments in front of the whole country that he had just finally started to talk about, though he really held them from the time he was in college. And capitalists were frightened, big business were frightened to death for him to have that kind of platform, because he talked about closing down all of Washington. He talked about closing off all the streets. He talked about taking over the governmental buildings. He called it nonviolent sabotage. He was going full radical, and that's why they killed him. So let's remember that. And he had a dream, but his dream was that folk would stand up and struggle to change things. And that's what we have to do if we want to honor him and to honor the gospel, because the gospel tells us to love our neighbors, and that is action. And unless we engage in action to really make a difference, then we're not fulfilling our gospel responsibility. And I don't care what you say you believe or how much we stand up and say, giving honor to God is the head of my life. It doesn't matter. If we're not trying to make this a more just world, we're not fulfilling our gospel responsibility.
And that right there, scene. my friend, big brother, colleague, the Reverend Dr. Obery Hendricks, who will be at Freedom Rising.
Looking forward to it.
Dismantling Fascism with Fierce Love. Y'all, go to freedomrisingconference.com and look at the incredible interfaith, across-disciplinary, multiracial, multi-ethnic, intergenerational, many-gender, multiple sexuality, badass faculty gathered in this critical time, called for such a time as this, to do what we need to do to heal the world. We're so glad you came. We're going to put this in Obery's networks and mine. We want you to come. You and I are the ones we've been waiting for, said June Jordan. Sending you big love, y'all. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Obery, thank you.
Thank you, Jacqui.
Bye, hon. Bye, everybody. Next time.